What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new around here, my name's Amar and I'm an electric skateboarder and content creator based right here in the UK. My goal for this channel is to be a resource for you e-skaters through reviews, tutorials and ride videos. So if any of that is of interest to you, be sure to smash that subscribe button. You don't want to miss out. Now, I've reviewed many mini style electric skateboards on this channel, and I love mini boards because they're so portable, so convenient. But a lot of these mini boards ultimately end up sacrificing and compromising on their specs, not least their battery capacity and their power output. Today, I have a board from Tynee, the Tynee Mini 3 Pro, which is quite possibly the most powerful mini board I've ever tried and I've ever actually seen released in the market. Really, my experience with this board has enlightened me in that gone are the days where you need big, bulky, all-terrain boards with massive motors to experience power. This board literally competes with some of my previous 80, high-performance electric skateboards, and it does it in this small package. Before we jump into the review though, thank you to Nobleman Tech for being our channel sponsors. Be sure to go ahead and check them out for all your safety gear, and you can enjoy 5% off at the checkout with the code AMAR. Now, onto the Tynee Mini 3 Pro. What a board. Really, I want to start this review talking about the specs because that is where this board shines. There are many electric skateboards on the market with this form factor, but where this board shines above and beyond all of them is in its massive power output. This board boasts dual 2,775 watt motors, which is just mind-boggling. The amount of power that you can experience on this board is absolutely phenomenal. And what I really love about this board, even though you've got that colossal amount of power thrusting you forward, you've got sufficient amount of deck room to really plant yourself down on the deck and really to feel stable. And if you're more of an advanced electric skateboarder, if this isn't your first electric skateboard, if you know how to shift your weight around the board when you're accelerating and when you're decelerating, really you can enjoy quite a lot of stability, even though this is, of course, a mini style electric skateboard. These motors will actually push this board up to its stock top speed of 31 miles per hour. I say stock because from within the advanced settings in the remote, you can actually unlock this board's top speed of 37 miles per hour. I was so shocked at that speed actually that when I discovered that this board went that fast or was capable of going that fast, I went to Reddit and I was like, this is just far too fast and far too dangerous for an electric skateboard. But actually having experienced the speed on this board and how this board actually feels under the feet, the ride feel to ride, and actually the stability and especially the great performance of these 105mm hydro wheels, really for those that are more experienced, is perhaps not as dangerous as I first imagined it to be, especially if you're wearing all your protection. If you do want a board that offers that thrill and that you're not going to get a board and then within a week you've mastered it and you've cracked it and you want the next bigger and better electric skateboard, this board will take you a long time to feel comfortable with at anywhere near 37 miles per hour, trust me. 31 miles per hour stock speed out of the box, which is plenty for me. I've had no issue at all in reaching that top speed, by the way. In fact, I didn't even get near 31 miles per hour. I got, I think, up to 28, 29 miles per hour, and I backed off, but the board was still accelerating, and I've got no doubt at all that this board will reach its claimed top speed. I quite liked how the motors were well tensioned out of the box. With other belt-driven boards that I've been sent, I've had to retension them myself, and Tynee actually ship you 2 spare belts in the box, which is very reassuring and very nice to see. Now, sticking with the power output of this board, let's talk about the battery. Tynee have gone for a 13S 2P pack of Molicel P42A cells, which is a fantastic choice because those cells pack a whole lot of juice and they'll combine perfectly with those belt-driven motors to provide you with that thrill and with that crazy torque and acceleration. That battery configuration rates this battery at 393 watt hours, which really is an enormous amount. It's a lot more than you get on many budget electric skateboards. Of course, granted, this board costs more than those, but it's a mini style electric skateboard, and the fact that Tynee Board have managed to pack a battery like this on this board is honestly really impressive. It does of course mean though that this board is not the lightest board in its category. It weighs in at around 9.2 kilograms, which to be honest is not the heaviest board in the world. I can quite easily lift it up with one hand here. Obviously that's a very subjective test, but really it's a very practical board that you can take around with you. You can put it, next to your seat on a train or under the seat, or you can take it on a bus. You can take it onto your university campus, bring it in with you to work, perhaps put it into a gym locker even. Small form factor, not a massive amount of weight, but definitely something that you should potentially consider if you're after a very small and lightweight electric skateboard. In terms of the range that you can expect from this battery pack, Aidan, who comes in at about 65 kilograms or 143 pounds, tested this board and he managed to get 26 miles of range on flat terrain, I think in speed mode 2. Now, if you have the 105mm hydro wheels installed on this board, which I highly recommend, by the way, I absolutely love these hydro wheels, then of course you can expect less range than that. If you ride faster than speed mode 2, if you weigh heavier than Aidan, which in my case, I weigh considerably heavier than him, with a backpack I come in at about 90 kilograms. And if you're riding not in flat terrain conditions, but you're riding hilly conditions, then again, that's gonna decrease your range further. In my own testing, I was looking at about 18 to 20 miles of range, depending on the conditions of the test and depending on the weather. Personally, I was incredibly impressed with that range figure because I was really letting loose on this board. I was giving it throttle wherever possible. I was carving aggressively because I absolutely love how these Paris V3 clone trucks perform on this board. I was really impressed with the range that I was able to achieve on this board, especially considering again that it's not an all-terrain board. It doesn't have a massive amount of space to pack in a huge battery. I think Tynee Board have done a great job with the range and with the battery on this thing. Now within that same battery enclosure, we have our ESC, which in this case is Tynee Board's advanced 80 amp Explorer version 2 ESC. Now when I unboxed the Tynee Mini 3 Pro, I was sort of hoping for a hobbying ESC, especially because I knew how much of a powerful board this is. But I have to say the Explorer 2.0 ESC that Tynee have packed in this board is actually a very, very good match and a very good pick for this board. Under my own testing, it's held up really well with smooth acceleration and smooth braking, and off the line, you really get to unleash all of this board's power. Of course, you can go into the advanced settings in the remote and you can tune exactly how this ESC and how the remote and the power curves and the braking curves perform to your liking, which is a great thing. But at no point riding this board did I feel that it was overly aggressive, overly jolty. Really, I think the remote pairs with this ESC very, very nicely, and it offers you a great outlet to be able to control that power in a meaningful way. Some of you guys may purchase this board and jump on it, hit the accelerator and say, Amar, what were you talking about? This board is extremely punchy. Well, that sort of goes with the territory with this board. You've got enormous motors, you've got a very, very strong battery pack on this board as well. But what I'm more talking about with the jerkiness is what I've experienced with other boards, some of my Evolve boards in the past as well, where you'll hit the accelerator and sometimes it won't be an instantaneous response. Sometimes the board will just want to throw you off and you'll feel that you're sort of out of control. Whereas with this board, especially after a few rides, after I've sort of got to grips with it a bit and understood it a bit more, really, you can build a connection with it. I've been riding too many horses recently. You can't really build a connection with your board in that sense, but you know what I mean. You can get a feel of the board, get a feel of the remote acceleration and braking curbs. Really, I don't think it's a jerky experience at all, especially if you're more of an advanced rider. You can, of course, purchase this board as your first electric skateboard, which potentially would be a very great choice because you can tune the board to not perform at its highest potential. You can even cap the speed at 20 kilometers per hour, and then you can slowly unlock the board's potential as you increase in your own ability. What I also love about the ESC on this board is that it offers smart turn on, meaning that you don't need to bend down and turn the board on every time because
disgusting.
But rather you can turn the board on from your remote, which is a very convenient feature. Now next I want to touch on the overall build quality of this board, and I have to say I'm very, very impressed with what Tynee have done here. The board clearly uses very high quality materials throughout, not least for instance with the rubber gasket underneath the battery and ESC enclosure. Also with, for instance, the integrated bash guard, which is a great thing to see considering how powerful this board is. If, God forbid, you took a crash and this board went straight into a pavement, you'd hope that this nose guard is going to protect the integrity of your deck. The board does, of course, also have a tail puck because it does have a kicktail at the rear of it, which you can make the most of. And then Tynee have gone above and beyond in other parts of this board, which is great to see. You have an integrated brake light just under the rear truck, which I think is a fantastic feature, especially for those of us that live in and around Europe, where sometimes it can be just gone 4 p.m. and it's already quite dark and you don't always have the clarity of mind to remember to charge your shed lights. Sometimes you just want to go for a quick ride to the shop, it's dark out, and really that light could be all that you need to highlight your presence to those road users around you and prevent them from hitting you and prevent you from sustaining any serious injuries. So it's great that Tynee Board have thought of that. I believe you can also control that light from the remote. I'll put it on the screen if I'm mistaken there. And in terms of the trucks on this board, we've got Paris V3 clone trucks. And really, they are a fantastic choice for this board, especially with the speed that you can potentially reach on this board. You really need great trucks. And in my testing, these trucks have performed really well. The bushings are a little on the harder side, which I like as a heavier rider. You could always switch them out for riptide bushings if you so preferred. And sorry to jump around a little, but with that rubber seal that we touched on earlier, Tynee are actually claiming that this battery is 100% waterproof. I don't propose to put that to the test. These days, I really don't like riding in the wet because it's not safe, but it's a pretty big claim from Tynee. I would say it's worth checking first if water damage is covered under the warranty before putting this board under any rain usage whatsoever. Always avoid rain riding where you can. Lithium-ion batteries and water do not make a good combination at all. It's just a reaction waiting to happen. But it's great to know that Tynee have tested this battery for that. So if you do get caught out in the rain, you should technically be fine, but always err on the side of caution on that one. In terms of the deck on this board, of course, it's going to be a stiff deck, which really allows you to have a good feel of the road. But the compromise there is because it has no flex, it's not a bamboo deck in that sense. It's going to be less comfortable, of course, but that's where we have these wheels to make up for the difference, but we'll talk about these in a second. In terms of the construction materials of the deck, as you can expect, we're looking at Canadian maple and fiberglass, and really it's a very great predictable deck under your feet. The deck itself has a shallow concave across it, and having owned the Boosted Mini X donkeys years ago now, RIP Boosted, I have to say that that deck had a more aggressive concave. I actually personally prefer this more shallow concave. If you're wearing the right shoes, I like to skate in these Vans. Depending on your foot placement, you can really experience a great connection with this deck. I don't personally prefer a heavier concave and a steeper sort of tub shape concave, but that's my own personal preference on that one. Some people may look at Tynee Board as a brand and perhaps notice that they haven't been in the industry for nearly as long as their competitors like Wowgo Board, like Meepo Board. But really what potentially many people don't know is that Aidan, who heads Tynee Board, actually worked for Wowgo Board for many years before starting Tynee Board. So really he's brought with him a lot of experience, a lot of industry knowledge, and it really shows, to be honest, with the build quality of his boards and with the immense and quick success that he's experienced at Tynee Board. Countless riders across the world and across the eSkate community are choosing Tynee Board's boards and products because they offer that amazing power, they offer great build quality, they offer even great customer service as well from what I've seen. So really rest assured, if you are intrigued by Tynee Board's products and if you are drawn in by the specs and by the build quality, don't be put off by the fact that they haven't been in the industry for as long as other brands, because Aidan carries all of that industry knowledge on his shoulders, and countless riders have already experienced the thrill of Tynee Board, and it's, in my opinion, already showing itself to be a strong competitor for brands like Wowgo, like Meepo, like X-Way, and other large electric skateboard brands in the industry. And if you did encounter any issues with this board, then you are backed by a 6-month warranty, which is great. And I have seen across Reddit and across the internet forums, customers speak very highly of Tynee Board's customer service. So rest assured, if you do experience any issues, you won't be left in the dark for at least the first 6 months, and I'm sure Tynee Board won't have any issues with supporting you after that, subject of course to you paying for any parts required to fix your board. Now let's move on to talk about the wheels on this board. You can either get this board with the Hydro 105mm wheels, the all-weather wheels as they're sometimes termed, or the 105mm cloud wheels. I've tried the 105mm cloud wheels, and one disadvantage of those wheels is the contact patch. Sometimes, especially if you're riding on tarmac, you can experience little contact patch with the road and with the tarmac. It's only sometimes when you go off-road and onto trails where the outer parts of the cloud wheels kick in and offer you that extra grip. The great thing about these wheels is that they're treaded, so they offer you an enormous amount of grip. Their contact patch is really wide, and I've thrown this board around carving really aggressively, and not for a second did I feel that I was going to lose grip and fall. So really they're stood up to my testing very well. They're actually a sort of mix between rubber and PU wheels. And honestly, although you do experience a bit of sacrifice on the range, with the great performance of the battery pack as it is on this board, I think that's a compromise and a sacrifice worth making, because you really get such a comfortable ride. It's a stiff deck, and these wheels do a fantastic job of absorbing a lot of those road vibrations and keeping you out riding for longer. And when it comes to the price on this board at the moment, with the Hydro 105 wheels, the Tynee Mini 3 Pro retails for $869, which honestly, I was so shocked with. You've got the 6 months warranty there as well to back you up in case you need it. Really, for the caliber of board that this is, for the specs that it boasts, and for the build quality that it's engineered with, I think that's a very, very fair price. And I'm sure at some points during the year, Black Friday, etc., you can see an even better deal on this board. Right guys, so I've ridden this board for about 100 kilometers now, and to be honest, I'm really struggling to critique it in any way whatsoever. I can't really critique it from a specs and performance angle. I guess the only real thing I would like to see Tynee Board improve with this board is the way that it looks. I do think that it looks a bit bland, it looks a bit plain, and of course that doesn't impact whatsoever on the ride feel or anything like that. But if you are going to pay a few $100s for it, and again that's just me being really nitpicky, I do think it could look a little bit better. I mean, the grip tape design is okay. I guess it could look a bit jazzier, and the underside of the board as well, it just, I mean, it's got everything that you need there. It just looks a little bit standard. Obviously the wheels do set this board apart from its competitors. Apart from that, I really cannot fault this board, and that's me being extremely nitpicky. But yeah, in terms of criticisms, pretty much all I can think of is that the board is a little bit bland in terms of its design, and you could always, I guess, customize the grip tape to your own liking by installing your own grip tape and giving it a bit of flavor, but that's all I can think of. Now I've covered all of these specs on this board, but how does it actually feel like to ride? It feels phenomenal to ride. The power and the punch that you can experience on this board honestly is comparable to something like the X-Way Flex Pro. And it's a bit crazy to say that, especially with the smaller form factor and the shorter deck. But as I said, I'm really surprised how Tynee Board have managed to construct this board, in that even though it's got that smaller form factor and the smaller, shorter deck, you still feel relatively stable at speed, and it still carves really nicely and really well. I personally haven't pushed it beyond around 29 miles an hour, and I wouldn't really recommend that most of you guys push it beyond that unless you're fully protected and you're more of an experienced rider. But if you're after a thrilling board that's really going to push your limits and push your skill level when electric skateboarding, then really I think this is a fantastic contender for you. The board feels really comfortable to ride with these Hydro wheels. The trucks feel amazing to carve with, and in general, although I can't recommend it to you without knowing your exact e-skate needs, I would say for $869, this is a fantastic option and a fantastic bang for your buck board. And yeah guys, I think I'll leave it there. Please drop down in the comment section below and let me know what you think of the price tag of this board. Do you think it's fair? Would you expect it to be cheaper, more expensive? Personally, I think it's just about right. Make sure you've liked the video if you enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and I'll catch you on the next one. Ride safely and peace. This one goes like 26 miles.
Oh, 26 miles?
I won't go 26 miles, it's too heavy.
See, there's a remote in his hand there.
Yeah, it works,
and that's your 360 thing in it.
How do you know that? You into your cameras?
Yeah, I'm moving official though, bro.
What has he got? He got 3 gears and all that on there. 3 different speed modes.
4 speed modes.
Or 4.
Is that the only one you got?
Huh?
You got a couple orders.
I got like 7.
Have you?
Yeah, they send them to me and then I make these videos to review them.
Oh, so you're one of them guys.
Yeah.
So you're like the Saranster in it, but the skateboardster.
I wish. My channel's not that big, but
Saranster's a bad boy.
yeah.
I'll watch him still.